Just as a reminder, this is number two of three webinars that Paragon is doing, an educational series on tapping programmatic advertising revenue for your digital streams and your podcasts. On part one, we kind of did an introduction to programmatic advertising and how it works. That one is on the Paragon website. Michelle, we hadn't talked about it. Maybe you could throw the link to that video in chat for anybody that wants to grab that, and then they can watch that later. But today, we're going to get an inside view. We're moving past the sort of like, what is it to like, how do you do it? And WBGO in New York is giving us an inside view. It's a very special view that they've opened everything up. They've not held anything back in terms of how they assessed this opportunity, how they planned it, communicated it, and implemented programmatic ads across the WBGO streams and podcasts, and how much revenue they've raised and how listeners have responded. As you probably all know, WBGO is the premier jazz station in New York City and across the world with heavy streaming. Um, we know that, having done research for WBGO for many years, their streaming audience is all over the place and large. On today's webinar, we're going to cover why BGO decided to pursue programmatic advertising revenue, the pros and cons, and the decision-making process, the technical setup and implementation, the communication with the audience, the launch experience, audience feedback in WBGO, how they handled it, revenue results and trends, the adjustments they made over time, and the technical and sales recommendations for stations that are considering going into this as well. I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. We'll go Steve, Jeff, John in that order. Steve Williams, you are up.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here. Thanks for asking us to do this. Uh, it's a great opportunity to talk a little bit about the justification and the progress that we've made. So, as Mike has explained, I'm Steve Williams. I'm the president and CEO of WBGO that serves the New York DMA, which reaches about 20 million people, give or take. And we are a proud member of National Public Radio, one of the earlier members of NPR going back to the 1970s. In fact, when we signed on in 1979, we were ushered into the NPR universe. And we have been there in a significant orbit ever since. Uh, and I don't know what else is there to say other than WBGO carries the is a standard bearer really for jazz music, jazz radio programming, not just here in the New York Metro, but across the country. As Mike says, we have tens of thousands of listeners across the United States, and about that many tens of thousands throughout really on every single continent on the planet, everything from Europe, Eurasia, Africa, Asia, Australia. I've received communication from listeners in Antarctica, so we are well saturated
You
when it
are.
comes
You
to
are.
when it comes to radio.
Steve, speaking for all of us, we want to thank you for opening up your books on this.
Sure.
Jeff, you want to introduce yourself, and then John.
Sure. Hi, my name is Jeff Schick. I'm the CEO and CTO of Sprite Media. We've been around for about 12 years now as a company. Before that, I was involved in radio and TV at iHeartMedia, Hot 97, CD 101, Kiss FM, ABC Television. So I've been around more than 40 years doing this. And I've been with being a consultant for WBGO now for, I'd say, more than 6 years. And was very happy to be part of the project. And for those, I see a lot of names go by. Some folks might know me from the Society of Broadcast Engineers or going out to NAB with Broadcasters General Store with my company, Sprite Media. And I just want to add the technical part here and make it a little less scary than some people may think. Now, one thing that I'm going to tag along on what Steve Williams said is if you look at the New York ratings for BGO, our streaming is right next to our on air, and obviously that does not include people in other countries who are streaming. So at this point, I would have to say without a doubt there are more people listening to BGO via stream than off the air,
Mhm.
which is something we knew was going to happen, and I believe we're there right now.
Yeah,
So
we
thank you
are.
for having me.
There we are. Yeah.
Welcome. You're welcome, John.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me, and hello everyone. I'm really happy to be here. My name's John Morris. I'm the Chief Product Officer at SoundStack. If you're not familiar with SoundStack, we're an independent full stack company that provides hosting services, monetization, audience insights, and a bunch of other suites of technologies to broadcasters and podcasters. It's really sort of what we do every day, all day long. We've been around for about 15 years. And what I'll say, quickly about myself and sort of why I'm here. I've spent the last 25 years in digital audio. Thank you, Nikki. And I'm a huge fan of radio. I'm a huge fan of public media, a big fan of podcasts, and it's just really sort of fun and rewarding to work in this industry with these great people like Steve and Jeff and so many of you that are viewing today. So thanks again, and really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, John, Jeff, and Steve. Again, let me make sure I'm saying this right. There is a Q&A under more. You see the little three dots at the bottom in a circle. It says more. If you click on that, there's a Q&A tab. I'm going to be watching that. Um, so I'll keep that open and let's get going. We're going to start off with Steve, and he's going to share some top line results with us to just show us some end of the story. We thought we would start at the end and throw it right up at the beginning because everybody's curious. Okay, what kind of money can you make with this, Steve?
Of course, that's always the question, right? Uh, well, right now we're doing much better than we expected. We've been at this since the end of October, and we are on track to clear about $40,000 when it's all said and done in this initial stage. And again, uh, we got out of the gate kind of slow, and then of course with anything new, you have some stops and starts. You have some tweaks to make because, man, we really were inventing some stuff that hadn't been, at least for WBGO, that had never been done. And so we had to bring together all the best minds in this world, Jeff included. And now that we have hit our stride with this, we're going to clear conservatively $40,000 in revenue, and that will only grow as time goes on, as we get better at this, as we establish a better relationship with the listener in terms of what their expectations are, and as we become more comfortable with the technological aspects of this, we'll be able to roll it out not only on our stream simulcast, but we're also looking at pre-rolls for podcasts. We're going to launch a significant on-demand initiative here in a few months, and that's also going to incorporate programmatic ads. But to say that we've made about $40,000 thus far is a significant. I said 40K, not 340K. That 340K is aspirational. But 40K is better than we had initially. But we had projected based on what we saw the CPMs being for us. We had projected somewhat less than that for the first year. And again, understanding that each year you're going to see some significant growth as we roll it out in these various platforms. But we're really happy with where we are right now.
That's awesome. Um, Moving to the next section, Steve, that you're going to keep going here. What were some of the decision factors that you guys had to tackle internally?
Well, the first decision was to do something that was counterintuitive. Is the best way to describe it. We, as a public media interest, are inherently non-commercial, and so the perceptions that we had to address as far as our audience is concerned, the internal perceptions, because there are staff members and board members uh, who are a little skeptical about this. This is a big step for WBGO. We did our homework. We knew that it was, from a legal standpoint, it was okay. But again, like I said, there were perceptions that we had to address, and uh, of course, the Mike, the primary. I don't need to tell anybody this, man. I mean, we had just lost $400,000 in funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and so where the hell is that money going to come from? We know that it's never coming back. And that's BGO, for all of its prominence, is really, a small community radio station located in downtown Newark. You know, we don't have the benefit of a major university or major corporate philanthropy to keep us afloat. So we really had to be proactive, I guess is the best way to describe it, in order to address that significant shortfall. That was the chief motivator. But then we then had, once I decided that this is something that we should do, you then have to pick the right partner. That's really key, because SoundStack's not the only company that does programmatic audio, programmatic ads. But they, for WBGO, has been they've been just amazing partners, the whole team, top to bottom, in helping us to adapt and adopt, and eventually grow over time.
Steve, what role did the listener trust play into this? How did you guys wrap your heads around that?
Well, we had to prepare for the inevitable, I'll call it backlash. Because we hadn't done this before, just, sticking your toe in a pool, which you really have no familiarity in. And so we had to, first thing we had to do is we had to simulate the reaction from the listener. And then once we did that, then we had to prepare adequate communication plan to address whatever feedback we would receive. We scaled it right from from violent to understanding, and everything in between, right? And we got that. We got some really nasty early on, the first weekend. The way it went down is that we decided to do over a weekend. We didn't really give any prior warning to listeners. We put it on. We put it on during a time where we knew we had a significant audience, and we waited for the response. And once the response came, we were prepared, not only mentally prepared, but we also had a communication plan, which went into action the moment we got the first response. And that basically consisted of uh, notifying stakeholders internally, whose job it was to respond to listener inquiries or complaints or compliments, which we actually got a few. And then we constructed a 3-paragraph letter that we sent to every listener that sent us an email or a written letter, explaining the reasons why. First of all, explaining what it is, what this whole thing about, because to them it's not it has nothing to do with technology. It's just what is this? What is this content that is in some cases an intrusion to my listening experience. So we had to first explain what it was that they were hearing, why we decided to do it, what we thought the expected outcome would be, and then we invited direct feedback, either to that communication that went out. By the way, and it went out signed by me. It wasn't a form letter, not really. It was something that we wrote together, but it was with my signature and my the stamp of approval of this thing. And then we waited for responses. And to a person, we got like I said, there were some that were angry. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Or anger, maybe anger was the second level of the emotional response. The first was surprise, right? Wow, what is this? What are you doing? That sort of thing. I would say we expected, by the way, if I can go on a little bit more about this, we expected an onslaught because anybody that has worked in public media for any length of time knows that we have super passionate constituents, people who are not shy at all about letting you know when there's something on the air that they don't like. I've worked in commercial radio, and it's a different experience, right? People seem to, not to say that the commercial radio listeners aren't engaged, but they don't seem to be as passionate about, certainly about some of these, some of the subtler aspects of programming. But so we were prepared for the passion of the public radio listener, but we thought it was going to be hundreds. Because in any given time, we got thousands and thousands of people listening to the radio station in any given 15, 20-minute period. So we thought we were going to get a significant number of responses. And we started it in the morning, and there was a Sunday, and went all day long. And I sat in front of my computer. I was actually on vacation in Florida. And I sat by my computer and watched the email messages come in. And when it was all said and done, we got fewer than 20 messages. And again, remember that we have thousands of people listening at any given quarter hour. So to get only 20 responses from people during a peak listening time was equally surprising to us, but it was also really encouraging. And I think a lot of that had to do with how we planned to roll this out. And then the responses were, first you get the 20 or so inquiries, and then you send the response back, and then you wait to see how that's going to be received. And I would say, without question, and I don't have the exact number, but I would say without question, the majority of responses I got were not, the anger had been deflated, and then we started to receive notes of understanding. I recall one listener said, "Oh, I knew this was going to happen based on what had happened, and it's not your fault," is what he said. It's not your
And
fault.
Steve, there's three questions, and they kind of dovetail right with what you're talking about in terms of your audience size. Do you know what the impressions are available for WBGO monthly?
It's somewhere in the neighborhood of, you mean in terms of CPM for us,
Yeah,
or yeah,
I think that's
somewhere in the neighborhood. It was, monthly. I saw a number that was 190,000 impressions or something like that.
okay.
Yeah.
That was from Angela Fowler at WCLK, and also Wendy Williams from CLK asked, "Can you please tell us exactly how it impacted your programming, if at all?"
There was no impact at all on the programming. We had to recalibrate our flow clock structure to accommodate the programmatic ads. Michelle Conrad, if you could show uh, that screenshot that I sent you, you can take a quick look at how it looks, right? So if you'll notice, at the top of the screen, that's the beginning of the hour. Then you have that 5-song sweep or 6-song sweep. Then this is actually the overnight clock, but the daytime clock is very similar. Then you have your intro into the local spot content. And then below that, you see something that says add insert. That's where the metadata cues the programmatic ads to play over the stream. Now, remember, we can't do this over the broadcast, so we have to leave the local content in the space where the programmatic ads will normally play. So we typically will have to add 2 or 3 promos. Well, we started with promo content and fundraising messaging, but we have pivoted to pivoted to something that can be even more appealing to the listener. Instead of hearing a series of promos, we've now inserted short duration song content because it has to cover the length of time, which can be adjusted. It has to cover the length of time that you are inserting programmatic ads, which for us is 2 to 2.5 minutes of programmatic ads. And so instead, this is just fairly recently, and I just grabbed a screenshot. I probably could have grabbed one that's really recent, where we have now started to insert song content of 2 or 2.5 minutes. And then we're also asking our production people to create interstitial content that we're pulling from clips on our social media platforms that will give us a little bit more dynamic audio quality in those insertion spots, but it will also at the end of the day allow us to promote our social media content as well. So that's how it
Okay.
looks. And then you exit that red thing that says return to program. That's the metadata queue to take it back to local programming. And then you see there's a stinger or a sweeper there, and then it's back to music programming.
Okay. Um, that's that puts that really puts meat on the bones there in terms of the flow. I hadn't even seen that myself until you just put it up there. Um, Jeff and John, in this next section, you're going to talk about the technical considerations of implementation. Maybe you could answer the question in the chat in the process of your overall part here. I think we're going to start with Jeff and to talk about the technical setup and what it actually looks like from the engineering side.
Yeah, sure. So when a promo, so you just saw on the screen with the automation, when it clicked to programmatic ads, it would go to an ad that SoundStack has, and if they didn't have one, which sometimes happens on an overnight, it'll play a promo. So we have mid rolls, which we have initially in AdWiz with SoundStack, and now we're moving to SoundStack Monetize. So we have 30-second promos that will play because we never know when a ad will be available. I have to say that the choices of the ads are very good. So we have pre-rolls. If we don't have a pre-roll of our own for WBGO, Marketplace will insert one. And what's really nice about it is it fits the product. It's not like somebody screaming at you to buy a used car or Crazy Eddie or anything like that. It's an appropriate spot for the format. And frankly, there are people who haven't even noticed that there was any change. And I have mentioned to a few people that we put in spots who are BGO listeners, and they said, "Oh yeah, it's fine." Especially, they're very forgiving, as what Steve Williams had said since the funding. So they want their public media station to survive, and this is one way of doing that. And as you know, there's a lot of people streaming these days, so we want to give people a very similar experience to what they would listen on the air. One thing SoundStack has technically, which is good, is by chance, if your spots are a little long, a little short, the SoundStack marketplace will adjust for that and will return at the point, as you saw in the log, where it ends. I would say if anybody's going to do this, make sure that you have as close as you can to 30 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever your break's going to be to try to be on that target. But SoundStack is very good for adjusting. So overall, it was a very easy process for us. And the one thing that I have to give SoundStack credit for is when we have a meeting, it's not just one person, it's a group of people. And then they'll say, you know, you do this, you do this, you do this. And we had it very streamlined to set up baby steps to get us going. So it really was very easy for us to get going. I have no complaints. Obviously, there's always some adjustments, and Steve Williams can tell you about that. Once we went on the air, there was a little bit of adjusting, but that's should be expected with anything like that. But I think the process was pretty painless.
Let me just piggyback on what Jeff was saying about the quality of the ad content and the flexibility which you are given to be in sync with the sound of your station. Before we even launched this, there was a filtering process in which there were hundreds of, at least it seemed to be hundreds of categories, ad categories in which we had to list through and then select the ones that actually, instead of selecting the ones that you wanted, you were selecting the ones that you did not want on the air. So, for example, gambling ads, right? We don't want that. There were all sorts of what we would consider to be objectionable content categories that we were able to filter through so that we could start the process of being in sync with the public radio aesthetic, right? And so that was helpful. And by the way, that filtering has improved since we first started, 6, 7 months ago. And I would imagine with the use of AI, it's going to be even more compatible to the sound of individual stations, not just a certain format or a certain class of radio stations. I mean, your own station, because again, it does have geolocating. So when the spots play, right, they're playing spots for your geographical location. So an example would be, I heard somebody, I guess is on WCLK, is on the call here. Well, we have listeners in Atlanta too. And when the ads play in Atlanta, it's ads for a product for like a Home Depot or something in that geographical location. So the flexibility is, man, it's astonishing.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. John, what can you tell us about the other side, the onboarding process, and any advice you have?
Yeah, I mean, Steve and Jeff touched on a number of the things that I wanted to mention, but from our side, it sort of starts with that high level technical evaluation. So, like looking at the actual audio content and the digital feed that we have alongside that content, specifically the metadata, right? So Steve showed the clock. Jeff did a ton of work around figuring out how to get that metadata into the stream. Maybe Jeff will want to dig into a little bit later. But we're looking at things like, is this a stream that we're monetizing? Is it a podcast? Is it broadcast to podcast? We have a tool at SoundStack that we call Splice that can automatically record your over-the-air content and make it available on demand after the fact. So that's the broadcast to podcast piece. How are we monetizing this? So like if it's a podcast or broadcast to podcast, is it pre-roll? Is it pre-roll and mid-roll? Is it all of the above? All those sorts of things. So we sort of analyze all that top level. We talk about the business rules. So like Steve just mentioned, what are the category exclusions? Like, we probably don't want to run political. Probably, maybe in some markets, or maybe all markets, or depending on your station type, and is it commercial or public? Maybe you don't want to run family planning or men's health, or like there's a number of categories that you want to block. And so we work with the station to figure out what those categories are. There could even be advertisers that you want to block. Maybe there's specific advertisers that you're already selling to. Um, and you just and you want to exclude them, whatever the case might be. We take all of that information and we funnel that then into our marketplace team. And our marketplace team on the SoundStack side, they're the ones who sort of connect the dots on the back end. And so they're connecting those programmatic demand partners then to that inventory, following all those sorts of rule sets that we just talked through. And actually, if I could, Mike, there was a
Yeah.
there was a question in the chat from Laura in Evansville asking specifically if this can be scaled, you know, BGO is in a big market. Can this be scaled to smaller markets? And the answer is absolutely yes, it can. And the reason why it works within the SoundStack marketplace is because um, really what we're helping make available is audience. It's the person who's listening. And that person carries a ton of value regardless of where they are, what market they're in. And so it does absolutely work. It absolutely scales for smaller markets. And it's the same exact process, really connecting the dots.
Let's continue with another question. I think this would be for Steve. Do you know the ratio on your streams of programmatic versus your local underwriting support messaging?
hmm it's generally equal in scheduling terms. So in other words, it's 2 to 2, right?
Okay.
And but obviously that varies depending on the day part, uh, depending on uh, our own manual um selection of the process. The other thing that we're really working towards, which is also exciting, and this is going to, your our CPM again, BGO, it's not light FM. Our CPM is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2, maybe less than that, 160, 170, depending on the day part. But in order to maximize your revenue generation possibilities, uh, you should be thinking about direct um, sales and insertions. As any public media operator knows, on the underwriting and sponsorship side, there's only certain types of copy and clients that you can have. Sometimes the client is on the fence with you. It's a client that would be compatible, but their copy isn't necessarily legal or compatible to the sound of the radio station. So you can't put them on your broadcasts. But that same client could be placed on the programmatic side and air on the stream exclusively, and your CPM doubles immediately uh,
Gotcha.
by doing that direct thing. Yeah.
Okay. Let's tackle the last question, probably for Steve. Does your on-air and programmatic clock always match?
Uh, I'm not quite sure I understand that question. Of course, it always matches. I mean, you saw it.
Yeah.
But if it means in terms of content, in other words, equal number of spots in the local side versus the programmatic side, no. Sometimes you have sometimes you have 2 minutes of local content, and depending on because it is a marketplace, it's not like we're manually or SoundStack is manually inserting equal number of spots for your station equal to what you're doing. It depends on what's available. Sometimes we have insertion breaks with no spots, as Jeff indicated, because it just isn't available, and that's usually in the overnight. Uh, but during peak listening times, you'll have 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes of local content and an equal number of
Okay.
spots on the insertion.
All right. I think we covered managing the audience already and sort of the launch and live experience with our earlier comments. If anybody wants to add anything to that, you can, but um, let's maybe ask one question in that bunch for John. Um, after you launch, you talked about how you set it up. How did the interplay work between the station and the marketplace um, after that, regarding fill rates and what was the early inventory performance? Did you have to do anything different than you thought after you got it going?
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for the question. And I loved, Steve, I loved your comment when you said that when you need something from SoundStack, you reach out and there's like not one or two, but there's a bunch of people
Yeah,
that
it was
that will jump in the
yeah,
call.
a relative army of people. I mean, we
Yeah.
have six. You never have that on a support call. You know, you if you get to somebody, which is hit or miss, you may
Yeah.
get one person, and it may be an email exchange. But we had one day I counted 6 people from SoundStack on one call, and then the 2 or 3 other BGO folk. It was really impressive, and it was heartwarming because it meant to me that you're taking this very seriously, not only from a business relations standpoint, but you genuinely wanted us to succeed in
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we care about your business. We care about the product we're delivering. And I wanted to sort of double click on that for a second because Mike, to answer your question, whenever we launch, it's kind of, it's always kind of like an all hands on deck experience. And we have people really across the company, people in different functions, listening to the stream, looking at analytics and metrics, looking at fill rates, looking at, programmatic win rates, looking at CPMs, all of those sorts of things, and making adjustments as we need to sort of dial things in, all the while in communication with our customer. So, getting on that call with Steve, and sometimes we feel like, gosh, we have 6 or 7 people on this call, and is this too many? But we do it anyways because I mean we care, and that's just sort of who we are. Um, and the listening aspect, I also want to highlight that like we're actively listening to what's being, to what we're delivering, what we're broadcasting. Because when you launch, like things aren't always perfectly aligned, right? Like the metadata that we get from automation, it might not be exactly tied to where the actual split points are in the, going from the terrestrial content. So Steve showed the clock, and then you've got that metadata marker to insert an ad, and then it rolls into a promo, or now it rolls into a song that's meant to be heard, but over the air only. Like if the markers aren't exact, you might hear a little bit of bleed over, right? One way or the other. And that actually did happen, when we first launched.
It did.
And
Yeah, you're right. It did, and you fixed it.
yeah, and we can we
You
can
fixed it.
we can adjust for that.
Yeah, yeah.
We can tune that. We have technology where we actually can look at the metadata, and we look at the audio waveform analysis. We're doing this in real time, 24/7. So and so when I say we, it's not a human being doing this, but the platform does this once we give it the right cues, and it can make sure that those breaks and things are aligned really well. and really tight. And in fact, Michelle, I think we have even a sample of an ad insert if you have that audio, if you wouldn't mind playing that.
Yep, I'll play it right now.
Thank you.
This is WBGO New York, also simulcasting on WNJP Sussex, WNJY Netcong, WNJO Toms River, and WNJT Trenton.
Hi, Flo here to say that Progressive knows that life can change quickly, so it's good to have flexible coverage.
Oh, like when I have to take my ex off my policy.
Oh, sorry. But yes, we can do that.
And can you send them a message and tell them that they have trust issues that they need to work on?
We don't really get in the middle of these conflicts.
Also, can you let them know that I was faking interest in his band and it's probably time to grow up?
I'm not going to do it. Just know that with Progressive, you can easily make changes to your auto insurance because we know life changes.
Also, I'm staying in touch with his mom because she's absolutely lovely.
Bad idea.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle.
Yeah.
There's a question I think probably for you, John, about local local sales.
Yeah, so the question is, local sales can they be sold locally? Yes. So within SoundStack Monetize, you can manage your own local sales as well as the programmatic channels. You can prioritize those against each other if you want. You can prioritize those based on your CPM. Normally, with your local sales, you just want to ensure that those run to completion and meet whatever promises you've made. But yeah, you absolutely can.
Okay. Any other questions? Just throw them in the Q&A under more, the three buttons at the bottom. You guys are doing a great job of covering all of our questions. I'm going to jump to the programmatic advertising revenue results and trends, the full picture. I know, Steve, you gave us a quick snapshot, but how did that work? Did it just pop to a certain level and stay there? Was it a ramp? Um, are there certain day parts that have done better than others? What did the optimization look like month to month? Just sort of like what else could you tell us on the revenue side?
Uh, so to answer your first, I guess it was maybe your first or second question about the ramping up versus just a sudden explosion in revenue. It was more ramping up, like I was saying earlier, when we started at the end of October, it was you might call it a trickle. And as each passing week, month went by, the revenue increased, not exponentially, but incrementally increased. Till we peaked here recently, we peaked at a monthly was about $4,300, which is about the highest that we've generated with the programmatic ads, and that's where it's been basically $3,000 to $4,000 is where we have been since then. I think well, we talk about tweaks, right? So I know a little bit about this stuff, but maybe just enough to be dangerous. And Jeff, I know Jeff will appreciate this because I had noticed that's the other thing, right? You got to always listen. You got to be listening to this stuff as much as you can so that you can evaluate it and make adjustments almost in real time, which is part of the beauty of this. But I was noticing that our ad insertion cue was placed in the clock right out of our basically right out of the underwriting sponsorship credit announcement, support for this station from listeners and blah blah blah, and it was preventing the paid direct paid ads from playing on the broadcast side. It was dumping out of them in favor of the programmatic ads. Well, um, if you got clients, as we do, listening for their spots and they're listening online, as you said, Mike, earlier, our online audience is equal or in some day parts surpassed our broadcast audience. You got a client that's listening for their spot and they don't hear it. They hear these programmatic ads and they hear it time and time again and they don't hear their local spot. Well, that's a problem. So I noticed it and I went in thinking that I could make the adjustment. Oh, how difficult can it be? I just need to move the insertion cue. But what I didn't realize is that I was messing around with the cover time. We talked about having to cover the programmatic ads with an equal amount of local content so that you don't have these either complete interruption of the insertions or this truncated audio. And then I noticed that our revenue for the week that I made that adjustment had like cratered. We went from we went from making, I don't know, we had, I think that was the month that we had about $2,500–3,000. We went from that, and then in a week's time, we were making $90, a week. And I thought, well, wait a minute, something's not right here. And then I listened, and I wasn't hearing the inserts. So I figured out that, yeah, Laura Porter says, ha, lesson. Yes, life is all about lessons, Laura, and that was one that I learned. But the other lesson is that when you notice that there's something wrong, you even if you've made an adjustment and it's not exactly what it is, the desired result, you need to call and find out how to fix it. And we did. I did. It didn't take me long to figure that out. And we
Okay.
talked to the guy at SoundStack, and he told us what to do, and now we're okay.
One of the Army
Yeah,
came to your rescue. I think I'll do one last question, and then we'll ask the three of you to provide your recommendations as we wrap it up for other people who might be thinking about this. But Steve, I'm curious, how did your local underwriting team react? Is this a friend or a foe?
depends on the person. I think we got a little bit of both there. Old timer. We've got two schooled. They're really commercial radio salespeople that now work for us. And as anybody knows, New York City is the most competitive advertising market on the planet. And they saw this. Well, one person did anyway, as competition. Well, they're taking, and then my response was, well, hell, you wasn't bringing that business in anyway. So, so this is an opportunity, not a detraction. But yeah, I think that depending on the person, depending on how you, the one thing that I did, Mike, to anticipate something like that was that before we rolled this out, we called the reps in and told them that we were doing this. And we framed it as an opportunity for them. The thing I mentioned a minute ago about, hey, you had the client that wouldn't come on because of copy concerns. Now that client can come on. You can go back to that client and tell them that, hey, we have, and by the way, look at our streaming numbers for somebody who might say, well, it's streaming, it's not broadcast. Well, no, yeah, no, our streaming numbers are strong. In fact, in some cases, stronger on the stream than it is on the broadcast side. So that's not it's not a liability at all. It's an asset. And so, again, it's all about communication. You talk to them first. You let them know that it's happening, and then you give them the individual rep reasons to think about this being a benefit and not a liability.
Okay. There's a question from Tom Hudson, I believe from Miami, um, asking, and probably for John, what's the revenue split, initial tech costs, ongoing fees, And I wonder if you could wrap that around, like, not everybody's in New York or Miami. Some of us are in Evansville or Tacoma or smaller places. Are they are they priced out of this game? But let's go through these questions, but maybe tackle that as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, broadly speaking, and I'm not I'll caveat by saying I'm not the sales guy. I'm more the product guy. But I'll say that broadly speaking, we do a small rev share for the marketplace, right? And so SoundStack takes a small cut, the station gets the lion's share of that cut. And we don't charge any additional transaction fees. So we don't also charge like a CPM for delivering the ad or for storing any of the ads or for any of those sorts of things. So generally, specifically, like ish 30, 70-ish, 70 to the station, 30 to SoundStack. Um, also, like I think I mentioned at the very beginning, we're an independent company. We actually run all of our own servers, so we run our own bare metal to the infrastructure and IT folks out there. We run our own bare metal in about a dozen different data centers. And we don't own the data centers. We lease space in big like Equinix facilities and et cetera, right? So big commercial data centers. But we buy our own bandwidth. We manage our own BGP network. We own our own IP address range. And so what that means, that doesn't mean anything to any of you. What that means is that because we own and operate so much of our own infrastructure, we can actually operate at much lower costs than most of the other folks in the industry. And so, we have really fantastic rates on bandwidth and, sort of all of the categories. But
Is there a
um,
certain market size or revenue size for a market that you have to draw a line and say, programmatic doesn't really work if you go any lower?
No, no, there's not. As long as the market has the right expectations, right? If you have five listeners online, we can enable programmatic for you, but you're not going to be earning the same kind of revenue that Steve's talking about today, right? So as long as I think market goes into it with sort of eyes wide open to the fact that like the overall sort of scale of audience matters. No, we can work with anyone.
It's awesome. Well, let's wrap it up. We're going to go Jeff, Steve, John. Recommendations. Jeff, your top technical recommendations.
Listener experience, which is that it's got to sound good. With your technical inserts, you can't have one spot playing and be in the middle of another spot. You also can't have, and this is coming from me listening to another major broadcaster. Well, when they go into a break, you hear the same spot 3 or 4 times. Listener fatigue. You can't have that. So I encourage everybody who's on this call, go to WBGO.org and either listen live, or we have every show that is on BGO has through SoundStack. You can listen to the previous 2 weeks worth, and some of them start with a marketplace ad. And when you do listen to it, you'll notice that it's not a 2 minute spot. It's the listener, when you click on it, it's not going to be that annoying to you. It's very listenable, the spots that are there that lead you into the programming. So it has to be the right timing. It's got to sound good, and it can't be too much. You can't have listener fatigue, and I think we've accomplished that with SoundStack.
Steve?
Yeah. In addition to what Jeff was talking about with UX, I mean, that's obviously job number one, right? um, uh, I think secondarily, we're talking about planning, right? I think without that planning, uh, anticipating, for example, uh, the response from the user, the listener, and then having a response ready to go, planning ahead in terms of the adapting the technology, thinking this through. Don't just jump into this headlong. Once you've decided that this is something that you want to do, think it through. Observe others who are doing this. I was observing not only radio programmatic, but also television programmatic through streaming television, how they were incorporating the ad inserts, and talking to other broadcasters about their experiences. And all of that went into the decision-making process, right?
It's smart. It's the more work you put in the beginning, the more it's going to pay off.
Absolutely. Yeah.
John, you want to take us home?
Yeah, I would just add, every station's different, right? So this is a great story. There's a lot of work that went into the story that, what we've been sharing with you today. But what's right for your station, right? Think about what's right for your station. What's right for your ad load? What's right for your, what's right in terms of the ad experience? Figure, think about those sorts of things. Be willing to sort of shift and make changes, right? So whatever you think was the right thing at when you launched, you might discover after a few days or after a week, hey, we need to make some adjustments, and be willing to do that. That's part of the process. Um, and that's it. And pick up the phone, be willing to have a conversation with a bunch of people. There's a lot of folks out here, a lot of people on this call that are willing to help. So reach out, use your network, talk to folks, talk to vendors, and have fun.
Hey,
Thank-
Mike, uh,
Yeah.
I know that there were some, maybe even some on this call, that when they heard that WBGO was doing this, the the question refrained was, "Are they crazy?" Well, no, we're not crazy, and no, we're not desperate. We are searching for a myriad of ways to make this thing that we do beneficial, not just for us, but for the listener.
That's great. There's a question about recording. I'm just letting everybody know. Michelle, I don't know if you can put a link in below what I just did, but yes, this will be posted on the Paragon website. It takes a little while for this thing to download and all that, but in a day or so, we will have that up there. The third webinar is probably going to be another 60 days, like we spaced the last one. In the third one, we're going to talk about best practices, lessons learned across multiple stations. We're going to get some advertiser perspectives, and what the landscape looks like as more public radio organizations enter programmatic advertising. So look for the date, and we'll be communicating all of that. Really do appreciate everyone attending, and I hope you have a great day. And thank you, panelists. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Mike. Thank you, John. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you all.
Bye, all.
Bye.